Hi there, this is the demonstration of my Cadet Myatt and Officer Cadet Schwartz's final project for CSE390. Before we run the program here, we're just going to go through a couple of the classes and talk about how we designed this project. So first of all, this project is incomplete. We had to manage priorities between this class and several others during exam season, and resulted in a somewhat complete product that meets a fair amount of the requirements. So the first step with this project was getting the GUI up and running. So creating the players, as you can see here in the player class, the board representation, and then displaying it all with some buttons and a background image. So let's go through what this program does here. So this is our test GUI class. This is just the class that runs the field of the game. So because it's incomplete, it doesn't go until all the flags have been captured. It operates on a number of turns system here. So first it creates a board, and then it creates two sets of players. So one for players that are playing and one for players that have been tagged, and then they are placed onto the board accordingly. So then in each turn, the turn goes down, a random player ID is picked to be moved, that player is then moved, and then the corresponding random player in the other two teams is moved as well. Then an update zone function is called, so that checks the player position and determines what zone on the field the player should be in, so red, yellow, green, or neutral. Our tagged, I have quotation marks in my hands, tagged zones are also kind of included in that, but we'll get to those later. And then with the zones being updated, the tags can occur. So it checks if a player is in their home zone, and then if there is a player adjacent to them, so up, down, left, and right to them, if they have an enemy player that they can tag. And then we have a field display here. So that is this down here, which shows a numeric representation of the field because we weren't able to get the GUI to update with each turn. So there's a couple of functions beyond that. So here's where we actually show the player GUIs. Here's where we show the prisoners on that GUI. And then this is just updating the list of tagged players, which would appear down here below the numeric representation of the field. So here's our update prisoners function. Basically, it takes the initial position of green, red, yellow players and their prisoners. So, and then each prisoner has an XYZ component on the GUI. So we had to manually find and assign those. And then it iterates through the tagged group for each team and places them in a horizontal line near the flag of the team that captured them. So then down here we have our update players, which basically takes the initial XY of the top triangle of the pyramid and iterates through, creating spacing for each player block, and reads from the numeric representation here, with spacing of the pixels, here for the X value and here for the Y value, to place them on the board. So then our update zones just goes through the X and Y values of each zone. You can kind of see highlighted how it would be for, I think, the yellow zone. And so those are just numbers we went through and found. Next is the tag check, which is a little more complicated. It has to go through the down, right, up, and left areas of the board, and so it checks if that area is valid, for there to be something there, and then it checks if there is something there and tags it if it is. So this is kind of part of the tag check. So it checks if this function checks if the area is valid for something to be there and determines what it is and make sure it's not a fellow teammate and it's not a flag. And then down here you just have the initialization of the GUI itself. So we made a layered pane, so you can add a depth variable to each J component, and that lets you put one image on top of another. And so here we're assigning the image of the background, and here we're putting it on a label. And then here we've just created all of the player icons and placed them on the board, and given them an ID number corresponding to their team, not their actual ID within the system. And then they are all placed on the GUI. So that's our GUI class. And then we'll just run through our player class real quick. So we have the player, they have the attributes of a team, if they're taggable, what zone they're in, their row. So this would be row 6, and their position within that row. So 3 would be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6, 6. So basically row is their Y value and position is their X value within the triangle. Their player ID is their unique number. So you can see 3, 15, 17, 1 for each of the 21 players. And then the board is just the board that this player exists on. So we have the constructor, and then this constructor this is the basic constructor, and then this is the actual constructor we use, where each player is given a team, the board, and their ID. So then from that information, it can put them in the right spot on the board. So the 1 to 7 players, they're all yellow, so they get placed in the top zone. And then the others are placed in their corresponding little triangular zones up here. It's kind of hard to highlight because things, but yeah. And then we have a little move player. So this is what controls kind of their AI. I didn't really figure out how to implement the AI given to us, so I just made this simple. If